Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Nick here. Well, we finally made it. We've finally come to the 40th Doctor Who season ranking, not including the specials mini-series and the Wilderness Years and the Darling movies. And this is, of course, Doctor Who Season 1. Hang on. Bad Wolf era. Okay, that makes sense. AKA Series 14 since 2005. AKA Season 40. Season 40! Overall. I might talk about how this works as the 60th anniversary season later, which would tie in with my two Universals videos from the start of last November, or end of last October, start of last November, about the anniversaries up to the 50th as we were approaching the 60th. So I might mention how this would work as the 60th anniversary season at the end. But until then, we have the 9 episodes, including the Church on Ruby Road, to rank. I did a separate ranking for the 60th anniversary 2023 season 1, or in that video it said series 14 specials. I called it series 14 in that because I was still not sure whether to call it season 1 Bad Wolf or series 14, so I just called it series 14. But this video will be called season 1 Bad Wolf, and that's what the rest of the reviews have been called. So do check out that video for my ranking of the 3 60th anniversary specials. But Church on Ruby Road was saved to be part of this, more so because it's more part of the season rather than the specials mini-series. So, with that out of the way, Season 1, Bad Wolf, aka Series 14. 9 episodes, including the Christmas special. However, due to the last 2 episodes, The Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death, being a 2-parter, they will be ranked together as they were reviewed together as well. So 9 episodes over 8 placements. The 9 episodes, 8 stories, are as follows. The Church on Ruby Road, the 2023 Christmas special, and then we get into the 8-episode season proper with Space Babies, The Devil's Cord, Boom, 73 Yards, Dot and Bubble, Rogue, and the 2-part finale, The Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death. Right, so let's not waste any more time and jump into the rankings, starting off with number 8. So a bit of a shorter season ranking than the previous series, apart from Series 13 and the specials mini-series, of course. I will also clarify that I actually really enjoyed this season. I mean, it took a bit of getting used to at the time for the first and for most of the episode's second viewings. Although a few others I liked a bit more on the second viewing, some not so much. On the third viewing was a really fun time, even for the episodes that I thought were the weaker ones. I think Church on Ruby Road I can now say I've seen at least 3, maybe 4 times. That's definitely the most watched episode of the series. So even though it's not a perfect series, I enjoyed myself. However, something's got to come bottom, and unfortunately, I think whilst episodes 2 to 6, the sandwich filling of the season are really good, same for the Christmas special, the bread, the bookends of the season aren't quite that great. And whilst the start's a really good place to begin, we're actually going to start with the end. Number 8 is The Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death. First of all, Harry Thomas, if you're watching, I apologise. This is your favourite story of the season, as you mentioned in the 73 Yards review comment section, and maybe this one's review comment section, but at time of this recording, that's not been made public yet. So I know it's your favourite story, I do apologise for that. However, we've all got our own opinions, and there will be rankings where this one will be coming middle, bottom, maybe not necessarily the very bottom. I know a lot of people would probably put Space Babies at the very bottom, just as easy as they would probably put this one at the bottom. And similarly, my number 1 choice, when we get to that, is not going to be everybody's favourite. I think that one will probably come down middle to lower placement on other people's lists, so it's all personal and subjective opinions. Okay, let's get the positives done first. The Legend of Ruby Sunday is easily the better of the 2 episodes, and if I was ranking these individually, this one would definitely be up a few more places. However, I do not think Empire of Death was a very satisfactory conclusion. Whilst I'm okay with the Ruby's mother reveal, and I've got that theory that I mentioned in that very long Universals review, please go and check that out if you haven't already, and if you have, thank you very much. So I've got that theory regarding Mrs. Flood and surrounding Ruby and her birth mother, but even taking that out of the equation, if you ignore the whole Ruby sort of hidden song in her and they struggle to find the next of kin, then it's still a good reveal. It's just that those hints earlier of them trying to find the birth mother kind of make it into more questionable territory, which is where that theory comes in. But I'm still fine with the reveal itself. It's more everything leading up to that is kind of more disappointing for me, because again, that revelation is fine if you take in the theory. Sutek is kind of wasted as a villain, unfortunately, as great as Gabriel Wolf is. The story kind of meanders a little bit, and the way Sutek is defeated is just rubbish. I'm not sure exactly how you could have ended it, but I'm sure there must have been a better solution. The memory TARDIS is appreciated, it's good, but again, it's just kind of there, and not really apart from giving the Doctor the rope and the whistle, it's not really that too much of a worry. It's just basically so they can get away from Sutek initially. Legend of Ruby Sunday, I feel, is the stronger episode, with all of the mystery building and the tension. Who is Susan Twist really? Is she Susan Foreman, or is she somebody else? Is she an alien, or is she human? Are they going to be able to find Ruby's mother through the time window? And what's this one who waits creature thing? It's all really great, and Sutek's reveal is great. It's just a shame Empire kind of let it down. Not to say Legend was a perfect episode, or Empire is completely void of good stuff, but I think this finale kind of drops the ball when it came to the wrap-up of the season. Not so much to the arcs, especially if some of those are going to continue into next season, but currently, as it stands, this finale is kind of weak. Maybe this finale will be looked upon better in the eyes of viewers and the fans after season 2 is out and after more of stuff has been revealed, like with Mrs. Flood. But as of right now, this is a bit of a disappointing conclusion to the season. We stand Maurice Gibbons, though. Even though he's probably a bit too young to be working or even being an apprentice for UNIT, but, child genius, so. But so long as child labour laws are being followed and he's getting a really good payout of it, it's all fine. Same for Rose Noble, but she's a little bit older, so they kind of get away with that, all making it be more of an apprenticeship. Okay, moving on to number 7, and now we go to the other end of the series. This one's not so much of a disappointment per se, but it is a really weird one and can make people uncomfortable on the earlier watching. Well, I felt less uncomfortable on later viewings, but I don't know about anybody else. I mean, they might still feel uncomfortable about it later on. They might feel more uncomfortable about it later on. So that is, of course, Space Babies. As the Doctor would like to say in that episode constantly. I'm going to make an amendment to my review. I initially passed it at a 7 out of 10 score, but since I've scored the finale as a 6 out of 10 for both episodes together, even though Legend probably would be a low 8 or a very high 7 at the least, Empire would probably be 5 or 6. So because I've ranked that one 6 overall, and Space Babies was 7, and I thought, they're very close to each other. So I was umming and ahhing a little about whether to give the finale a 7, but I ended up going with 6. And I thought, considering Space Baby's not that much higher, maybe I should lower it down a little bit to a high 6 rather than a low 7. So I'm changing the Space Baby score a couple of weeks after the review and passing it at 6 out of 10 instead of 7 out of 10. This is not the first time I've done the change of scores. The Flux ones, apart from episodes 2 and 4, kind of changed a little bit. Like Survivors of the Flux, I believe I gave 7 initially, but then I lowered it to 6 or 5. So Space Babies, I am going to lower it down from 7 to 6. But I think it's a higher 6 than the finale, or at the very least, they're more or less on par. I think I'm going to give it to this one still a little bit, because it was formerly the 7, so it's just one place a bit higher. Also, Empire of Death's disappointments drag Legend down with it, so the higher 7 score is not quite achievable. Arguably, these are the two stories that most people would say, yes, these are the weakest of the seasons. Not everybody. I know some people prefer Space Babies to Devil's Cord, for example, but I can totally see people being like, yes, these are the weakest 2 stories of the season. Space Babies is just kind of meh. I mean, it's awkward and silly and feels a bit uncomfortable, and it's not really season opener material. I will say that, and did have to mention this in the comments section in the review. This is not Disney-fied Doctor Who. This is not because Disney is co-financing it. If this was Netflix or Amazon, or even not even having a streaming partner, if it was just BBC or just BBC and Bad Wolf, this episode would still be made. It may not look as good as it does. Believe that sentence, if you will. But it's not because the Disney executives have been like, oh, we need an episode about space babies. As weird as that sounds weird. So no, it's not a Disney decision. This was purely Russell T Davies, Bad Wolf, and the BBC. Pick one or an amalgamation of 2 or 3 of those. Well, if it's 2, it has to be Russell T Davies and one of the other 2. But, Russell's idea, Russell's script, and then supported by Bad Wolf and the BBC. And Disney just kind of helped fund the episode and released it on Disney Plus for international viewers outside the UK and Ireland. Okay, we good? And the same with the rest of the series, actually. I mean, apart from a few notes that they probably sent back, and that scene with the snowman in church on Ruby Road falling on the Doctor was based on Disney high up saying, oh, we would like a bit more of the Doctor in the earlier part of the episode, and a few other things, but it's mostly notes. They don't really tamper or interfere with the series, as far as we're aware of. So that much. I know there's way worse studio meddling with TV and films out there. This is more, okay, this is just a couple of notes going back, but the ball is mostly in the BBC and Bad Wolf court for the creative side. Right, mini rant about that out of the way. Yeah, there's not really much more I can add to this story that I didn't mention in the review. It's just kind of a meh, somewhat enjoyable, also somewhat super silly and awkward, and slightly uncomfortable, and certainly on a more first and maybe also second time viewings, it's a bit uncomfortable. Third time, I was definitely able to just breeze through it. It wasn't too bad outside of what I had already experienced, but yeah, it's not exactly the greatest way to open a season. Bonus fun fact, apparently the Space Babies are going to have something to do with next season, according to Anita Dobson, who plays Mrs. Flood, who mentioned something at the Cardiff Comic Con, that something is going to happen with the Space Babies next season. Whether that's just them turning up as a cameo or guest appearance, or if they're secretly an important part to next season, is to be seen. And if that's the case, this is another episode we may have to look back on and be like, okay, so this one was made for this specific reason. But, however, even after that, we will still be judging it as its own individual thing. And right now, that is not great. And I don't really see that reputation changing too much until we get there. But, who knows, maybe Season 2 will make us change our minds on some of these episodes. We'll just have to wait and see. Number 6, and this is going to be the most controversial pick on the list, because everybody and their cat, or almost everybody and their cat, adores this episode within an inch of its life. Maybe it's kind of dropped in popularity a little bit since its release, but for the most part, everybody adores, or at least adored, this story. Apart from myself, which I thought, yeah, it was good, but I didn't quite entirely feel on board with this one. And second and the third times, I've been a bit more on board, been able to watch it easier, a bit more, especially on the third viewing. But that first one was still, that was almost as awkward as the Space Babies, if not more so. And that was Boom. I don't know what it is, but this season has some episodes that you just feel a bit awkward on the first viewing, but then you kind of feel a bit better on the second and third viewings. Dot and Bubble had a similar experience, but I think that one was more intentional. This one, I think, is the least intentional with that, at least out of those 3 examples. I just can't get into this one as much as everybody else. I get the objective appeal, and the first 15-20 minutes is easily the best part, and mostly because it's with the Doctor and Ruby on their own, and that's easily the best bit. And the ending's pretty good. And also, it doesn't feel very long. Like, you get to about 2/3 of the way and it feels like it's already starting to come to the end, but there's still a little bit to go. but not in a bad way. I mean, it's a fairly good paced episode compared to some of the other episodes of the Moffat and Chibnall series where they feel a bit rushed, or they're taking their time and then they have to wrap up the ending in the last 5 or 10 minutes. Series 7 is especially guilty of that. That's one good thing about this season, is the pacing across the board is really good in all, if not at least most of these episodes. Some of them could feel like they could have been a bit longer to expand on some stuff, like 73 yards. Others could have been a little bit shorter if they didn't need some plot points like Empire of Death. But I think generally these episodes at 45 to 50 minutes, 55 or 54 at least in Empire of Death's case, and also the specials being between 54 and 61 minutes, they're really good paced. But I just can't quite get into the Boom, and it's mostly with the supporting characters and their actions. I can't quite get on board with Monday when she first turns up after the titles. Like, she's fine in the pre-title scene, but I'm not really that big of a fan of her when she turns up at the crater until she eventually starts wisening up. And Splice is kind of a bit annoying. Might not have been so bad if they cast a younger actress, or they wrote the character to be older to match the actress's age that they did go with, but I don't think the casting crew were on the same page as the writer when it came to that character, because they cast someone who's like 8 to 10 in a role that's probably better for a 5 or 6-year-old. The only real supporting character I quite liked was Splice's dad, and it was more from when he was the interface and how his AI system thing, after he's killed, the AI that retains his memories is able to save the day and stop the rogue AI, the ambulance thing. I thought he was a good supporting character, but I wasn't really too fond on the rest of them. One of them just dies at the start, and the other ones aren't quite as great. But at least it gives us a good taste of Varda Safru's acting chops in Doctor Who before she takes on the next companion role, Belinda, in the next season. So looking forward to seeing how she plays her next year. But just not quite a fan of the supporting characters. The rest of it is fairly good, but I just can't quite get on board with this story in general, and it's mostly because of the supporting characters in the episode and some of the decisions they make. Also, the 15th Doctor and Ruby are written to be more like the 12th Doctor and Clara Oswald, more than what they were like in the previous 3 episodes, 4 in the Doctor's case. And the directing definitely mirrors that. And whilst that's not necessarily a bad thing, it just feels more like a scrapped Series 8 or Series 9 episode, as opposed to a new idea or an episode that wasn't used but given a slight rework to fit the new characters. No, it just feels like it was a unused episode from Series 8 or 9. And not necessarily a bad thing, but it just comes across as a bit strange and it feels out of place. So this maybe should have been in Series 9 instead of Series 14. On the other hand, it does look like the 15th Doctor is going to channel the 11th Doctor in Joy to the World, just like he channeled 12 in this one. So he's sort of balancing the 2 main Moffat Doctors in the last 2 Moffat stories. So we'll see. So yeah, Boom. I just can't quite get on board with this one as much. Moving on to number 5. Now this one is probably going to be a choice that people will be like, yeah, totally get where he places that, or another controversial pick for not being higher, and that is Dot and Bubble. Another episode that kind of felt uncomfortable with at the time of its broadcast, but and also the one that it took me the longest to rewatch, even more so than the finale. And, well, in terms of time, at least. Dot and Bubble is, or at least I think so, actually. It might have taken the finale a bit longer, but it kind of felt a bit longer for Dot and Bubble. So yeah, I think this one, it is definitely better once, after you've watched it, you know what's coming. And even if it takes a while to get around to rewatching it, you still kind of, okay, it's not as bad as when we're experiencing it. It's not quite as awkward. I do like how, firstly, we're following a character who is an absolute bitch and female bastard. She is absolutely self-obsessed and narcissistic, more or less, like at least subtly, and just downright nasty. Quite a pretty not very nice person. But it's interesting that we've got, this is probably the first time we've actually followed an antagonist as the lead. I wouldn't say the protagonist of the story, as the lead of the story. Like the not very nice person is the lead of the story. Outside of maybe the villains taking over the story for a little bit before the heroes come back and save the day or something. But yeah, this is probably the first time that the heroes have been the main character of almost the entire story. I think it does hand back to the Doctor at the very end, but for the 95% of the episode, 96%, it is on Lindsay, and we're pretty much staying with her all the time, or relatively close to her during that, until again the ending where we hand back to the Doctor and we're watching from his perspective. And it is a bold and ballsy move to focus on a very dislikable character who turns out to be the real villain in the end. Not so much like I was secretly the bad guy all along, like the usual suspects type of twist. No, more of a secret, okay, this is why the AI and the slug creature things, the man traps, were trying to kill everybody. It's because of this, and okay, now we're kind of on their side, and it's like the Doctor and Ruby shouldn't have bothered trying to save these people, except Rookie September, of course. But yeah, again, there is still some elements where I can't quite entirely get into, but I think I have an easier time watching this one now than I do with Boom, more so because I kind of get it a bit more, but also because it's trying something new and interesting. So is Boom, but I can get on board more with the story and even the supporting characters, even though they're supposed to be more unlikable, and yet it's more interesting to see how the society works and the interactions with each other and with outsiders. And that ending, man, that ending. Like, it was the themes were subtle, but it was building to it. Also, possible racism aside, because he lives in a society that is racist. That aside, we stand Ricky September. And if he was racist, he'd be the only one who probably would start to wise up about it and actually hold on, maybe it's not such a good idea to be a racist. So we're at the halfway point now, and we're moving on to number 4. Now, this one I just had a blast with. I don't really see how this one is a necessarily bad episode. I can understand people not really gelling with it, but I feel like it's a pretty damn fun episode. The Devil's Cord. Now, this one serves as a semi-sequel to The Giggle, as well as giving us a bit of setup for the finale, which makes its second place in the broadcast order a bit questionable. Maybe this and Rogue should have been swapped around. Well, but in that case, we have the two non-Russell episodes back to back, and I don't think that's a good idea. Maybe more of a halfway episode. Maybe this should have gone between the two Dr. Light stories. But this is a fun episode. Yeah, maybe it needed a bit more time to establish more of the Beatles stuff or the world without music, although I thought that was handled well, that latter bit. And the Beatles saving the day could have had a bit more time. But I think this is a generally good story for the most part. Maestro is a great villain, and whilst Jinx Monsoon wasn't as delicious as I initially thought she was going to be, they were still delicious as the villain Maestro. And some people saying Maestro's annoying, but I honestly think actually they're good. I think they're a great villain. They're certainly over the top and campy. I think for this story it's fine. I know the series has got a bit more over the top campness to it in general, and that's more so due to, well, firstly, these first two episodes starting off with the lightest hearted episodes of the series, Space Babies dealing with space babies, and then this one going full out camp and ridiculous and bonkers, but fun, because it's with the toy maker's child and a fellow god, Maestro. So I think this episode is able to let its hair down and let loose a little bit. It's fun, especially since after this we're going to have quite a few hard-hitting episodes next. Back to back, we're going to have 3 episodes that are a bit more darker and or emotionally hard-hitting. Heck, 4 if I add Rogue to that latter point. And yeah, the finale as well, but Rogue sort of kind of calmed it down a little bit before we get there. Not much more to say about this episode than I already have in the review, other than stop sleeping on this. This is a good one. Have some fun. Moving on to number 3, an episode that a lot of people loved at the time, and I think is still a fairly popular one now, even if its nits have been picked quite a bit. And that is 73 Yards. At the time, this was my favourite episode of the series, besides maybe Church on Ruby Road and Wold Yonder if I was counting the specials. And yes, I still stand by it being the best episode besides the 2 specials, plus one that would come later. And I still stand by that it's, not including the specials, it is the second best of the series. But there are a few nitpicks that are more noticeable, like the whole Marty subplot. Like, what was that about? Was that supposed to prove a point about, like, domestic abuse, or did she know how dangerous he was more so than the rest of the audience? I'm not quite sure. The whole Marty subplot is kind of undeveloped and undercooked. However, the story is still really great at building the tension across the episode, with the mysterious woman following Ruby, her life kind of being going downhill from that point as people keep abandoning her and she gets more alone. What I think this episode does best is Ruby's journey on her own after the woman starts appearing, and as the woman is still following her, more and more people abandon her and or turn against her, and it's a tough struggle, but a good tough struggle. This is important for the story and the emotion, and especially when Carla goes, we stand Carla, but this episode and Church of Ruby Road, there are points where she turns like resentful, and I think the actress does a fantastic job playing both sides of Carla, like the loving adoptive mother side, who's awesome, and the resentful, cynical one that after that in Church on Ruby Road, when Ruby's not in her life, and in this episode, after hearing what the woman has to say about her, whatever that is, we're not going to find out about that. That's fine. That's just another mystery to be thrown into the wonder what that was ponder. So I think this episode is best when it's doing Ruby's character journey across the board. And Ruth Millie Gibson gives her best performance in the entire series in this episode, considering it was her first one too. That is ballsy. That is such a bold move on the writers and directors' part, at least, to start with this one. And yeah, absolutely amazing. Apart from a few nits and picks, like, yeah, I mentioned them in the review, but yeah, there's a few nits and picks, mostly with Marty and the Roger App Gilliam subplots, but the tension stuff is done really well and it looks amazing. Moving on to my second choice, and I pretty much don't really have many, if any, negative opinions on either of these last two overall. And we start off our last two with the Christmas special from 2023, The Church on Ruby Road. This is the easiest episode of not just the series, but also the entire Bad Wolf run so far to watch. It's easy breezy, fun, enjoyable, light-hearted Christmas fun featuring goblins that also nicely sets up Ruby Sunday's character arc, introduces her and her family, as well as the mysterious Mrs. Flood, and is just a fun blast. Also starts off the mystery around Ruby's adoptive mother really well. And whilst the payoff may be disappointing for some people and the conclusion to the arc wasn't quite as great, the start is brilliant. And I also throw in a bit of Space Babies in there as well, with the arc doing a really good job of setting it up. And yeah, Church on Ruby Road is easily the best Russ script by Russell T Davies for this season, not counting the 60 specials, in which case Wild Blue Yonder is the best. But this is an achievement. This is such a good episode. So really fun and enjoyable, and the pacing is great. And I think it helps that we have returning 13th Doctor era director Mark Tonderay back on board to helm this episode, much like 12th Doctor era director Rachel Talalay did for the Star Beast. I think bring back previous directors to helm a Doctor's post-regeneration story, the first story of their TV runs, was very beneficial for both the 14th and 15th Doctors, respectively. And they do a really great job with that. I'm looking forward to seeing previous era directors come back to direct more episodes in the future, plus new blood coming in to direct episodes, as well as some of the newbies from this series and the specials doing a few more. I know Dylan Holmes Williams is directing the entire 5-part series, The War Between the Land and the Sea, which features 13th Doctor era and the collection box set writer Pete Mattei co-writing with Russell on that series. Well, hopefully it'll be better than Practice, huh? And I actually thought Practice was fine. Not amazing, but it was alright. Anyway, so yeah, Church on Ruby Road. Absolutely bloody brilliant, and one of the best Christmas specials, and one of the best festive specials, if we include the New Year specials into the mix. Joy to the World, you have big shoes to fill, but I'm confident that you will fill them. I'm also confident you'll probably be better than Boom. What? I think it will be. I could be wrong, but I think it will be. It might not be as good as this episode, but I think it'll be better than Boom, so yeah. But finally, we now come to number 1, my favourite episode of Season 1, and my second favourite of the Bad Wolf era overall. But with that being the 14th Doctor, then that means this is my current favourite 15th Doctor episode, and it is, of course, Rogue. Yes, Rogue, the historical or pseudo-historical story set during Regency Britain, featuring the bird aliens known as the Chaldra, and Jonathan Groff, aka the voice of Kristoff in the Frozen films, and the original actor to play King George III in Hamilton, as the new Captain Jack-esque character, the bounty hunter Rogue. And it's fantastic, guys. Seriously, again, this is another episode to give it another go, because it's honestly really good. I know some people may not entirely get on board with it, and maybe some people can pit the nits as well. And I think that scene with the Doctor and Carla should really have been at the start of The Devil's Cord, or at the end of Space Babies. Unless this episode was supposed to go second in the broadcast order, and then it got swapped with Devil's Cord. But even then, it still should have been earlier on in the story. But besides a few niggles, I love this episode. This is so freaking good. I really, really like this. I know not everyone's going to rank it so highly. Doctor Who TV viewers, for starters, after giving it low scores that ended up putting it on the updated 20 worst Doctor Who stories since 2005 list that they posted. Seriously, guys, you think this is the 20th worst story of the revival / since 2005? Well, people who voted for the Doctor Who TV scores for the episodes that combined it to be placed 20th on the updated worst stories ranking after the season 1 finished, season 1 Bad Wolf, series 14, then you have clearly enjoyed episodes from 2005 onwards than many other people have. Apart from the Jodie Whittaker era, because that list is full of Jodie Whittaker episodes. A few Peter Capaldi ones and some from this series as well, but mostly Jodie's era. What a fucking surprise. Meanwhile, their best list, I think, is mostly 10th and 11th, with a few 12th Doctor era stories. I don't even think there was that many 9th Doctor ones on it. But whatever. But in my opinion, Rogue is the best episode of the 15th Doctor's era so far. The best episode of Season 1 or Series 14 or Season 40. Not including the specials, and the second best if I am including the 60th specials, and the second best of the Bad Wolf era overall, in both of those last two cases after Wild Blue Yonder. So, there we go. I think this is a brilliant episode, and, you know, if I had the choice of which episodes to watch a 4th time, besides Church on Ruby Road, because I've already watched that a 4th time, and I think the same for the other specials as well. But from Space Babies onwards, which episode I would like to watch a 4th time first, I'm going to say this one, because it's just so damn fun. It's also the most traditional episode of Doctor Who that has been so far in quite some time. Like I said in the review, either since Legend of the Sea Devils, or Can You Hear Me, or Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, depending on what you would classify as traditional. So there we go, that's my ranking of Doctor Who Season 1, Bad Wolf, or Doctor Who Series 14 for since 2005, and Season 40 overall. Before we wrap up, a reminder of the list. So number 8 was The Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death. Number 7, Space Babies. Number 6, Boom. Number 5, Dot and Bubble. Number 4, The Devil's Cord. Number 3, 73 Yards. Number 2, The Church on Ruby Road. And number 1, Rouge, which is probably the most underrated episode of the series. Well, that or Devil's Cord. And the most overrated episode? Guess. Fucking guess. Okay, that was a bit more aggressive than it was supposed to be. It's Boom. At least in my opinion it is. But what are your opinions? Drop them down below. What's your favourite? What's your least favourite? What's the most overrated? What's the most underrated? Etc, etc. Do you agree that Rouge's the most traditional episode of the series? Do you like the more experimentation to the episodes, especially in the middle? Or would you have preferred something different? Which I think a lot of people are going to say yes to that, but, you know, just throw your comments down below. So as for me, Season 1 was a pretty good series. I enjoyed watching it at the time, even though there was a few episodes I was a bit uncomfortable with at the time, but came around with on the second and or third viewing. And after the rewatch for these reviews for both this channel and the Universals, links, videos are provided on this channel to them. Or if you're subscribed, you should have them in your subscription feed at the time. And there's also links in this channel to that channel. But after rewatching this season for the reviews and adding Church on Ruby Road in as well for this ranking, yeah, I found this to be a really fun and enjoyable season. Okay, it's not the best one yet. I think currently in my 40 season ranking, because I did the big 39 season one last year, to add it as the 40th season being added to that ranking, I would now probably place it, I think, 23rd or 24th. So I would put it, I definitely would put it above all of the Jodie Whittaker series, and series 11 was 25th on that list. That was the highest ranked Jodie era series. Series 13 was the next one down at 26th. Series 6 I had put 24th, I believe. And then I think it was Season 8 from the Pertwee era at 23rd. So I think I would probably put this one, I'm thinking placing it between Series 6 and Series 11. So I think this would now be 25th with Series 11 down to 26th. And then everything before that, because I was doing it backwards order, 39 down to 1. So everything from 39 to 25 has now been pushed back to be 40 to 26. So I think I would put this 25th out of 40. Although I might swap it with Series 6, so I might even put this 24th, and that one goes down to 25. I'm currently going to say Series 6 is a little bit stronger, but I think that's because it had more time to develop its arcs, and it had a few more traditional episodes that were still really good. But on the other hand, there was quite a few episodes that series that weren't really that great, and that was the first series where there was less not as great episodes that year than the previous 5 series had been. Heck, previous 7 if I counted the classic series, starting from season 25. But this one, whilst a bit more solid in terms of the quality, I think kind of maybe missed the mark at the very end. So did Series 6 as well. So I think those two are very clearly close to each other. I'm giving 6 the slight edge, but Series 14 is literally right behind it. So at the moment, I'm placing Series 14, Season 40 in 25th place, but it could easily swap with Series 6, Season 32, and go to 24th place, and then Series 6 goes to 25th. However, Series 11, Season 37, and everything ranked below that are moving up one spot to be 40th to 26th place, which means Season 17 remains my least favourite season of the show overall, and Series 7 is still my least favourite of the revival. That was 37th, that's now in 38th. So, yeah, that's my current placement for Series 14 in my now 40 season ranking. It now takes Series 11's 25th placement spot, but depending how I feel, I might swap it with Series 6 as well, the next one up. But Season 8 of the classic series is still above it. Maybe if I do an updated one after a few more Shooty Gatwa series, then maybe we'll have a distinctive or definitive spot for this one. But for right now, I'm placing it 25th out of 40 with the possibility of swapping to 24. But it's not going any higher than 24. It's not going any lower than 25 so it's good at the moment. So it's between those two. It just depends how I feel about Series 6 when I come to that final decision. And finally, how did this season compare to previous anniversary seasons and served the 60th anniversary? Well, the thing about this one is it's also trying to be the start of not just a new Doctor's era or a showrunner's first season or returning showrunner's first season back. it's also trying to be the first of a brand new era, just like the first Russell Series 1 did. And, whilst I don't think it's quite as good as that Series 1, or even the Classic Season's first Season 1, as evident by that one also being above this in my ranking, I think it's a decent start to the new era. As an anniversary season, not quite as much. Ranking the 5 anniversary seasons, 10th, 20th, 25th, 50th, and this one, then this one comes in the middle. 10 and 25s are above, and 20 and 50s are lower. 25 is a special one. I don't really add the other 5s, but if I were counting the other ones, 5 is season 5, I believe. 5 or 6. I think 6 was on at the time. I would say seasons 5 and 6 are better than this, though. I placed season 6 mid-teens in my ranking, and season 5 and 4 are near the top 10, or 11 at least. 15th is seasons 15 and 16. I think season 15's late 20s and might now have breached the early 30s now. And season 16 was also mid-teens. I think that one was exactly 16th place, actually. Season 25 was a few places above that too. I think in the top 12. And then the 45th anniversary season was Series 4. That's the best series. Number 1. So when it comes to anniversary seasons, they're kind of all over the place, especially if we're going by the 10 decades. Because, like, season 10 was great. Season 20 was not so great. Series 7 wasn't that great either. And the 13th, 40th didn't have any, so... if I was counting the 5th ones, 25 is the big one. That was great. Series 4 was amazing. And for the 5th and 15th anniversaries, season 5, 6, and season 16 are great. And season 15 was good, but not great. And I think as the anniversary series, it is a great series. So it's above, like, 15. It's above 20. It's above... Series 7, but I think it is below all those other anniversary seasons, including the 2 for the 5th and the other 15th anniversary ones, but still a solid season. It is probably the least anniversary of the 4 decade anniversary and 5 main anniversary series that we've had, but it's still a solid series, and I think it works as the second best of the decade anniversary seasons and the third best of the main 5 anniversaries, 10, 20, 25, 50 and 60. Again, 30 and 40 didn't have any, and then the other 5 anniversaries are kind of extra. 75 will be another special one though, but ones like 65, when we'll get to that in 2028, will be not as much. And who's to say we'll get something in 28? By the looks of it, 2026 might not even have anything. I think we will. It might just be a bit later on. Anyway, so that's my ranking of Doctor Who Season 1, Bad Wolf Era / Series 14 / Season 40. Yeah, I like this series. Okay, it's not perfect, but I like it. So that's my last video on this season, at least for now. Maybe we'll come back and do some Reeve Station reviews of it, as well as Series 13 and the specials mini-series for both in a couple of years' time. But as for now, thank you so much for watching this ranking and the reviews of this series, and on both channels, Dis and Universals. If you haven't already, please do check them out. And I'll see you guys next time for the next Doctor Who review, which will be the first episode for Season 2 of Bad Wolf, Series 15 of the revival, or since 2005, and Season 41. Season 41?! I'm not going to be like that every time I say Season 41. It's not a special Season 40, but, Season 41. And that will be Episode 0, the Christmas special for 2024. Joy to the World. And then we'll have another 8 episodes. Not sure how many stories. I think at least 7, because I think there's going to be at least 1 2-parter in it. Probably the finale again. But it's definitely going to be 8 episodes plus Christmas, so I'm predicting 7 stories, 6 single-parters, and then concluding with a 2-parter. So we're probably going to have 8 stories comprised of 9 episodes, including Christmas, next series. But we'll see how that goes. Things could be completely different in the Season 2 Bad Wolf / Series 15 ranking video next year. But until then, and until the Joy to the World review, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the Nicholas Payne YouTube channel.